One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
Why was it hard for you to listen to?
For lots of reasons. Obviously I thought about my own situation, which seemed to be different than his, actually, but still brought back those memories and thinking about Dad and just visualizing what Erik was telling me was making me ill, and I didn't want to say, let's not talk about it, I don't want to hear it. And for him, it was like he wanted to get it out, and it was a very uncomfortable period of time. And then he started telling me. Then I realizing how sick it was. It was very different from what happened with me. It was very much forceful. That came later after the conversation, but. First he was telling me just about some of the things that would happen, and they were very sick things. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I wonder what my mom is thinking, knowing that this information could be out there, and what my dad's thinking, assuming that they had discussed what we could say to people. And that really made me very nervous, that I really didn't realize. I didn't realize till he started talking about it, how how bad it was, that how scared my dad might have been that this would get out, and it was more than just like he fondled his son or something like that. I mean, this was very sick, and he started, and it was forceful, and he was telling me, he started telling me then about the threats that my father had made against him throughout all those years.
Objective being hearsay and has to be limited.
Basically, he started telling me that my dad had, one of the reasons he had never told me before was because my dad had always threatened his life, and essentially used me against him, saying that if he ever told me, he would kill me, and that Erik would be responsible for my death. And threatened him in other ways, physically, and my brother had just done a lot of it in just fear, constantly. And so that disturbed me a great deal, and actually made me angry with him again, because...
Angry with whom?
Erik.
Why?
Because, well, this was the first I was hearing of this, and on Tuesday he could have told me these things, and I felt like, I told him, if he told me these things on Tuesday, maybe we would have done something different.
What do you mean, would have done something different?
Well, I certainly would not have just brought up, I would not have had the conversation on Thursday that way. Because
Conversation with your father?
Right, with my father.
Why?
Well, the whole point of going Thursday was the idea that he was just going to we had all the cards, and obviously Erik knew that we didn't, that my dad was willing to kill over it, and which is something that I probably should have figured out on my own, but I just didn't think about it. Erik had never said anything, and we just sort of went in this fantasy state that it was going to be great. And I think if I had gone back, and I told him Friday that in an angry way, that we could have just never said anything and tried to figure out another way to get you out of the house. Could have just said that you couldn't take it anymore for some other reason and you had to leave, or just something like that. And if my dad didn't think anybody knew about what was happening to him, maybe he would let Erik go for other reasons. So anyway, it was a bad conversation, and he started crying that I was getting upset with him, and I felt guilty again. Basically, we just, I told him, okay, now we know this, and that's good. And at that point, we thought we should definitely try to get some guns.
Did this change the way you thought of your dad? After
Oh,
hearing this information?
Thursday changed the way I thought of my dad.
You mean the talk?
The talk and what happened to my brother afterwards, and in fact Tuesday changed the way I thought of him, but Thursday, him basically threatening my life, going to that extent, really confused me. I was sort of, my whole world was upside down for it. And my dad was like a stranger, almost, in a sense. And I was struggling with that, because he and I had had a very close connection. And I was not wanting to believe that he would kill me over my brother. And I think he was probably wrestling with the same thing, like, why was I going to throw it all away just for Erik and ruin him? And so I was wrestling with these things in my mind, but mostly I felt like, this guy is more violent, dangerous than I knew, and that if he could do this to my brother, he could do anything.
Did you end up in a gun store in San Diego?
Yes, we decided we would go ahead and buy shotguns, and that we felt that if we were going to get attacked, it would be at night, more likely, and so we felt we should buy them, and we went ahead and tried to do that.
And what happened?
Well, we went to a smaller gun store, and there was an older man behind the counter, and they were asking lots of questions. And at some point, we had kind of decided on what we wanted to buy. And he was very much into the whole shotgun thing and telling us that it was a great weapon for house protection, and that's what we told him we wanted for. And so at some point, we got ready to actually buy the guns. He asked if we had California ID.
Did you have a California driver's license?
No, neither of us. No, I didn't have one.
You're not. Have an exhibit. So when the man at the gun store asked for a California driver's license, did you have one?
No.
Did Erik have one?
No.
Did he have someone else's?
Yes, he had Donovan's.
And did you then buy the guns at that store?
No, we were going to buy the guns at that store, but when he asked for ID, we kind of were taken back by that. We didn't know that we had to show ID at all for these guns, and I just felt that it was. I talked to my brother a little bit out of this hearing, and we just felt that we should go outside and talk about the ID thing, obviously. And so we had that conversation first, and then we decided there that the whole thing was so awkward in the store with the guy that we had better not buy the guns at his store.
Did you go to another store
Yes.
in San Diego?
Yes, I think so.
Was it a Big Five?
Yes.
And did you buy 2 shotguns there?
Yes.
And what did you use for identification there?
He used Donovan's license and signed for it, and we bought them.
And did anybody at the store show you how the guns worked or tell you about them?
I don't think so. They might have. And I think the lady showed us just the very basics of it, where the ammunition goes and just that whole thing. But she didn't have any like shells there or anything. I mean, she didn't really, there was no way to demonstrate it, and there was no, there was no way to show us. But I mean, she did some kind of explanation. But I was mostly wandering around the store, allowing Erik to complete the purchase. It was a long thing. She had a form with different stuff, and we had found out of a phone book, we felt that maybe it should have a local address. since Donovan's address was San Francisco or something up north. And then we didn't know if there were going to be further restrictions, like you had to be in that city. We just didn't know the rules. We kept finding out as we went along. So he did the whole form, and it didn't seem to be any problem. And I got a box of ammunition, and
Where'd you get the box of ammunition?
they had a stack of boxes stacked up in the middle of the place. And I took 1 or 2 boxes, I don't remember, and purchased them separately. Just went in the line myself and bought them.
Then did you drive back that evening?
Yes.
And what happened when you got home?
We got home, and my mother came down right away and told us about the fishing trip.
What do you mean told you about the fishing trip?
She told us that the time had been changed from some point in the middle of the day to later in the afternoon. I don't remember the times, and that we were expected to go on the trip. And my brother kind of said something, and I said, well, we don't, they had mentioned this trip to us before, and we had said we weren't going to go. And
Did the time change have any significance for you?
the time change had a significance. I didn't really know what the original time was, but she was saying it was changed for some reason, and also the fact that it was in the middle of the day seemed strange to me as a time to go shark fishing. And I didn't believe the whole thing. I thought the fishing trip was the way that my dad had designed to take care of us, kill us. And because originally the idea was that he had lied to this executive guy that he was a deep sea fisherman, and he had to do a quick practice session, and that's how this whole thing arose. And he had not expected us to necessarily go with him, because I was going to practice tennis, so we had a tournament coming up, and he wouldn't have expected me to take 5 hours doing this, but he had to. And now he wanted us along with him, and so we gave my mom a hard time about it, and she said, well, if you don't want to go, you can go up and talk to your dad. And she was very cold about it, and we didn't want to do that, so we just said, oh, we'll go.
Why didn't you want to go talk to your dad about not wanting to go?
Probably should have, but I just didn't want to have a conversation with my dad after Thursday unless he initiated.
Okay. So she's told you about the time change. Was this a pleasant conversation with her, or?
No, she was, seemed like she was reporting. It was like she was sent downstairs to tell us. It was like a message.
Why did she come downstairs?
Because we had come in the door. And in our house, the door was, it was very noisy. You could hear it close, very loud. And so she came downstairs and gave us that message. And my mom always spoke as if it was my father speaking. Your father says do this, your father wants this, your father thinks this. So that was the kind of conversation it was. But she was she seemed very cold about it. And I couldn't even believe that she would think that I would agree to go on the trip, because it just seemed so completely out of, we had this major crisis in the family, and she was wanting me to go on a fishing trip.
Had you talked to your dad at all on Friday?
No.
Did you see him at all on Friday?
No.
After you had the conversation with your mom about the fishing trip, what did you do?
My brother and I talked about the trip, and basically felt that we clearly could not bring shotguns aboard the boat, and we basically didn't know what to do. What could we do? So we just decided that we would try and be away and sort of be late and miss it.
How did you feel about the idea of going on the fishing trip? Was this just something that didn't sound like a good time, or did you view it?
No, we thought that this was how they were going to kill us, and we couldn't be positive, but we were feeling pretty sure, although it had been planned in advance, so we really couldn't be positive. And wasn't sure how I felt about it, as far as whether I would, say that we just weren't going and demand that we weren't, say we weren't going if the time came, or what. And we didn't think that there was anything we really could do. Again, we didn't want to bring it to a head with my dad. I didn't want to let him know that I wasn't, that I was going to cause problems. I was trying to be low key and
Were you
wait.
feeling low key at that time?
No, that was one of a bad night. We were we wanted to stay he wanted to stay with me in my guest house, and I told him, no, that's going to look bad. Just stay in your guest house, and let's try to make it seem like...
You said stay in your guest house.
I mean, you stay in your room, and I'll stay in the guest house. And we'll try to make it seem like there's nothing, we're not that concerned about the fishing trip, and maybe we can find a way to just miss it.
Why did you want to look like you weren't concerned about it? What did you think was going to... How was that going to help?
At this point, my brother, it's easier to explain it, because in the morning the next day, my brother was just so afraid, thinking that they were going to kill us at any moment, that he was going to die, they're going to kill us. And I felt less and less in control of my own situation with regards to it, and feeling like Erik was going to do something, say something, and that was going to bring it to a confrontation, or they were going to I just felt like if we brought it to a head, my dad was going to say, if he hadn't made the decision, he was going to say, we have to do it, if he was wavering. And I was hoping that he was wavering, maybe.
Wavering about what decision?
About whether he could allow us to go on with this information, go on living. And I felt like I didn't know how much time it would take my dad to arrange something if he had decided. I didn't know if he had decided. If he hadn't decided, I told my brother, I don't want to give them the indication that we're so out of control that we're likely to just not think and go tell the police or run off and do some of the things I had threatened. I was hoping to give my dad the idea that maybe I had changed my mind or something like that, although I wasn't going to go to him and say that.
Why couldn't you go to him and say that?
Just based on who he was, and that that was just play right into their hands. I felt that I would go and I would say, Dad, I changed my mind. What I would have to do was say I'm going to abandon my brother. So I was never going to do that. But if I wanted to do it to buy time, my dad's likely answer is, great, I'm glad you changed your mind, and kill him anyway. And so it just, unless my dad initiated the conversation, and then maybe I could think he was sincere, I wasn't just going to go to him and then have him lie to me. And as he had said that, that's what he would do in that Chinese Revolution thing. And
What do you mean?
the Chinese revolt, where the students were revolting, I remember my dad saying that the Chinese leaders were screwing up with the tanks and so on, and they should just acquiesce, give in to the demands, let it calm down, and assassinate all the student leaders, and the problem would go away. And instead they were causing this big national scene on TV. And that's the way my dad thought. Didn't like messy problems, liked things simple. And so that's one of the reasons, basically the reason I didn't want to initiate a conversation myself, although we were very much hoping that they would do something.
All right, let's take a recess, ladies and gentlemen. We'll resume.
Sat in his room and I slept where I was, and we had just decided that more than likely, if something was going to happen, it was going to be at night. That's just what we felt. And that was certainly the only real purpose for having the shotguns was for the night, and that's what we were most worried about. And so we just stayed up as long as we could while still getting some sleep. And we figured after a certain time, then we were probably safe for the evening. So that's why I didn't sleep. Didn't get much sleep.
Did you have the gun in your room that night?
Yes.
Was it loaded?
Yes, I kept it in my bed, loaded, every night.
When you got up the next day, did you see your dad in the morning? On Saturday?
No. I didn't see him until we came back.
Did you and your brother go somewhere on Saturday morning?
Yes, we left the house sometime in the morning, and we drove. We had talked about the night before that being a little, I had bought the shells separately from Erik, and there was some conversation about it, the concern for whether those shells would actually work in the gun, because I don't know anything about guns, and so we just wanted, it seemed like they fit, but we wanted to make sure, so Erik found a place in the phone book that I guess seemed like there was a lot of different kinds of ammunition and so on, and so we drove out there.
Where was it? Do you remember?
In Van Nuys.
And did you go to the gun store?
Yes.
And what did you do when you were there?
We asked the guy, we told him the kind of gun that we had, and yeah, I told him the kind of shells that I had bought, and just asked him a bunch of questions about what he recommended and for protection and so on. And he was also extremely knowledgeable person, and just going on and on about the different kinds of ammunition, and eventually recommended a certain kind, and we bought that.
Did you stay away from home most of the day? Or did you?
We stayed away from home so that we could miss the trip, and which was most of the day. In fact, it was pretty much all day, and we got back like sometime around 4 o'clock, I think. Not exactly sure, but late.
What time were you supposed to be back to go on the trip?
At 3, I believe.
So were you intentionally late?
Yes, we were intentionally late, and I didn't want to be too late, but I wanted to be late enough to miss the trip, and I knew that my dad had arranged this trip, and he had to do it, assuming he wanted to, something unusual wasn't planned, and so we showed up, and they were still there.
When you said you didn't want to be too late, why didn't you want to be too late?
Again, I didn't want to get my dad to think that we were purposely avoiding the trip, and then have him think something strange was going on with us.
When you got back to the house, had they left already?
No, they were still there.
How did you feel when you saw that?
I knew it when I pulled in because the cars were still there, and I just kind of pulled in anyway, and I believe my mom immediately came out of the house upset that we were late and let's go, and basically went right back in the house, and they had things arranged, whatever they were going to take, and it was just like a whirlwind of activity, and I never had a real chance to talk to my brother about maybe we shouldn't go or what. Next thing I knew, we were heading for their car to go. Mom was putting everything in Dad's car, and we had some discussion about taking 2 cars.
Who wanted to take 2 cars?
I wanted to take 2 cars.
Why?
just thought it was safer to take 2 cars. And Dad was insistent that we take the 1 car. And
Did you sometimes take 2 cars when the whole family was going to the same place?
sometimes we took 2 cars, sometimes we took 1 car. Well, neither would be real unusual. But I, again, didn't want to have a problem with him, so I just said fine, and we sat in the back. And
What did you think was going to happen on the fishing trip?
we felt that the fishing trip was arranged to kill us in a way that nobody could know.
Why did you go?
We shouldn't have gone, but I don't really know why we went. We didn't know what else to do. And it was just a constant thing with me that I did not want to give my dad the impression that I was going to go tell people like I had given him the impression before, apparently. At least that's what he thought. And so I basically just went along with the things he insisted on. And so I went. We just hoped nothing would happen. Hope we were wrong.
When you got to the fishing boat, what happened then?
We got to the marina, which I don't believe I'd ever been to before, at least not that area. And there was this sort of scruffy kind of, I guess it was a boat captain guy hanging out in the dock, and my dad ran up to him and they started talking. And then my mom got the stuff out of the back, and we followed her toward the dock. And then we got over to the boat, which was very different than I expected. And both my brother and I the whole thing was very strange, and it made us even more nervous.
What was very strange?
Just the boat was a very small wooden boat, and we had expected, we had been deep sea fishing before in Florida, and they were always, big. I'm not sure what boats are made out of, but like big white yacht type boats and this was a very small wooden boat with just one little section in the middle. It just didn't seem like the kind of thing that my father would rent to do his deep sea fishing. So I could tell my brother was real nervous, and I just didn't say anything about it. Commented on the size of the boat, something like that, and the captain said something. He seemed all right, the guy, but I figured he was either working for my dad or he wasn't. And so we got on, and we left.
And where did you spend your time on that trip?
We definitely stayed away from my parents just felt, it sounds stupid, but we felt that at the very least we could jump off if we saw something unusual was going on. And we just tried to do it in a way that didn't look like it was obvious, but that it was difficult for them to get to us. And luckily the boat was designed in a way that you really couldn't get around the side to the front easily. You almost fell off. You had to like swing yourself around almost. So we just stayed up there.
Up there being?
In the front of the boat. And my dad stayed in the back with the captain guy, and my mom was back there.
Was your mom in the back with your dad the whole time, or was she?
No, Mom was mostly in the middle section inside, and I wasn't sure what she was doing inside, but she was in there.
Was the front of the boat a comfortable place to be?
No, I felt, it seemed like you weren't supposed to be in the front of the boat, and which is why we liked being up there, because it was very hard to get to, but it wasn't designed for people to hang out there. And it was a very cold, windy, like choppy waters, and the boat sort of bounced along and water would come up, and it was extremely uncomfortable and freezing, which was I was wondering if my dad was going to wonder why we were staying up there when it was clearly freezing and uncomfortable. But we stayed anyway.